I had only been working as a delivery driver for a short time, but already the job felt almost too normal. I just turned 17 a couple of months earlier, and like most kids my age, I wanted some cash in my pocket and something to put on my resume. Delivering pizza sounded perfect, simple, flexible, and way better than being stuck behind a counter staring at the same four walls for hours. Most nights blurred together. Same car, same streets, same houses. I could have driven some of those routes with my eyes closed. Regular customers, familiar doors, quick handoffs. Nothing exciting, just routine. The only time things ever felt even slightly different was on weekends. On weekends, the store stayed open late. Really late. Deliveries ran until 2 a.m., and that meant random orders from people I'd never seen before, addresses I didn't recognize, and longer drives into parts of town I usually didn't go near at night. This night was a Saturday. A storm had rolled. In earlier thick clouds, heavy rain, the kind of weather that makes everything feel quieter and darker than it should. In most jobs, a storm like that would slow things down, but not pizza delivery. If anything, it made things busier. Nobody wanted to go out, so they stayed in and ordered food instead. The orders kept coming non-stop until around midnight. I was running back and forth, in and out of the car, rain soaking my jacket, windshield wipers working overtime. At least the tips were good. By the time things finally slowed down, I was tired, but in a decent mood for the first time all night. There were no orders waiting. I stepped inside the shop and took a breather. I didn't really talk to anyone. Most of the guys working there were way older 30s, 40s people who treated this like just another shift in a long line of shifts. A couple of college kids worked there too, but they weren't on that night. So I just stood around, killing time, waiting for the clock to move. That's when the next order came in. Even though another delivery driver had been hanging around chatting for almost an hour, the order was handed to me without a second thought. I didn't argue. I never did. I just grabbed the receipt, picked up the pizza, and headed out the door like always. I glanced at the address before getting in my car. The street name didn't ring a bell, which was unusual. According to the GPS, it was about 20 minutes away. A long drive for a late-night delivery, but part of me didn't mind. I figured if I took my time, maybe I'd avoid getting stuck with another order before closing. I pulled out of the parking lot and started driving. Rain tapping steadily against the windshield by that hour. The roads were nearly empty. No traffic. No headlights passing by. Just me, the sound of rain, and the hum of the engine. Looking back now, it sounds eerie. But in the moment, it felt peaceful. Like the town was asleep and I was the only one still awake, moving through it. I had no idea that feeling was about to disappear completely. The GPS eventually led me off the main roads and into a quieter part of town. The kind of area where houses aren't close together, where trees stretch out on both sides of the road and swallow most of the light from the street lamps. This neighborhood wasn't unfamiliar to the town itself, but it definitely felt more isolated than where most people lived. Each house sat far back from the road, hidden behind rows of trees, connected by long, narrow driveways. Not abandoned, just distant, like everyone who lived out here preferred to be left alone. I turned onto the street listed on the order and slowed down, checking the numbers as I passed. Eventually, I spotted the driveway. It was longer than most, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. I followed it all the way up and parked near the front of the house. The place was big, old, too. The kind of house that probably had a lot of history behind it. But what stood out immediately was the darkness. Not a single light was on. No porch, light, no glow from the windows, nothing. I sat in my car for a moment, pulling the pizza out of the hot bag and getting the receipt ready. That's when I noticed movement. Upstairs, one of the curtains shifted slightly, just enough to tell me someone had been standing there, watching. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, but it was unmistakable. Normally, that wouldn't have bothered me. People watch delivery drivers all the time. It made sense. They wanted to know when their food arrived. But something about this felt different. The window was completely dark, so I couldn't see anyone behind the curtain. Just the movement, like a shadow pulling back out of sight. I brushed it off and stepped out of the car, pizza in hand, walking toward the porch. As I got closer, I noticed something that stopped me in my tracks. There was another pizza box sitting right there on the porch, not from my shop. It was from a different, local place, one I barely even knew existed. I'd only heard the name a few times. I looked around instinctively, expecting to see another car pulling away or parked nearby. But the driveway was empty. So was the street. The box looked old, damp, like it had been sitting there for a while, absorbing moisture from the rain-soaked air. Whoever ordered it clearly hadn't bothered to bring it inside. That alone was strange. I stepped around the box and knocked on the door. Since the order wasn't prepaid, I needed to collect the money. I waited, listening. Almost immediately after I knocked, I heard something move inside the house. A shuffle, a shift. Then, silence. I stood there for a full minute. Nothing happened. I knocked again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. No footsteps. No voice. Just quiet. I knew someone was home. I'd seen the curtain move. So after waiting another moment, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed on the order. A few seconds later, a phone started ringing inside the house. It was close. Too close. It sounded like it was right on the other side of the door, like someone was standing there, holding it. But the door didn't open. That's when the uneasy feeling really started to sink in. I stood there on the porch, rain misting through the air, listening to that phone ring inside the house. It rang a few times, then stopped. Still, no one opened the door. At that point, confusion had completely replaced patience. I knew someone was inside. I'd seen the movement upstairs, heard the sounds after I knocked, and now the phone had confirmed it. Yet whoever it was refused to show themselves. A tight, uncomfortable feeling settled in my chest. The kind you get when something doesn't make sense, but your instincts are screaming at you anyway. I started thinking maybe they were messing with me. Maybe it was some kind of joke. Teenagers bored on a Saturday night, trying to scare the delivery guy. That idea didn't really help though. If anything, it made it worse. I glanced down at the other pizza box again. It was still sitting there, untouched, cold, forgotten. I was just about to place my pizza on top of it and head back to my car when a sudden voice made me freeze. It came from directly behind the front door. Door's broken. Bring IT around to the side porch. It was a woman's voice, but not the way I expected. It sounded rough, gravelly, like her throat was raw or damaged. The words were clear, but the tone sent a chill through me. I took a few instinctive steps backward, heart thumping harder now. Every part of me wanted to leave. But I also didn't want to get in trouble for abandoning an order without at least trying. After a moment of hesitation, I forced myself to move. I walked off the porch and around the side of the house, the rain soaking through my clothes almost immediately. There was no overhang, no shelter, just open space and cold air. The pizza box started getting damp in my hands. The side door came into view, and something about it immediately felt wrong. It looked old. Not just old, unused. The wood was worn, cracked in places, with dirt caked into the corners. Thick spiderwebs stretched across the frame like the door hadn't been opened in years. The outdoor light above it was broken, leaving the area in near total darkness. If the front door was really broken, wouldn't this one look more used? I stood there, rain dripping down my face, waiting for some sign that someone was coming to meet me. Footsteps, a voice, anything, but there was nothing. 30 seconds passed. Then another dot, no sound from inside the house at all. That uneasy feeling from earlier came rushing back stronger this time. It felt like the air itself had changed, like I wasn't alone anymore. I slowly turned my head, scanning the darkness around me. The trees loomed just beyond the edge of the yard, thick and unmoving. Without any lights on, I could barely see. Past a few feet, and then it hit me, the unmistakable sensation of being watched, of not from the house, but from somewhere else. My pulse spiked. My instincts were screaming now, louder than any sense of obligation to the job. Whatever was going on here, it wasn't normal. And it wasn't safe. I didn't wait any longer. I dropped the pizza right there and bolted. The moment the pizza box hit the ground, I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't try to be quiet. I just sprinted through the rain, shoes slipping on the wet ground as adrenaline completely took over. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was going to break out of my chest. I reached my car, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside. My hands were shaking so badly, it took me a second to get the key into the ignition. When the engine finally roared to life, I peeled out of that driveway without a second thought. As I drove away, I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see headlights behind me, or worse, someone standing at the edge of the trees, watching me leave. But there was nothing, just darkness and rain swallowing the road behind me. Only once I'd put a few miles between myself and that house did I start to breathe again. That's when my mind began replaying everything. The dark house, the moving curtain, the phone ringing just behind the door, the other pizza box, abandoned like it never mattered. And suddenly, a thought hit me so hard, it made my stomach drop. What if that other pizza wasn't old? What if it had been delivered right before me? I realized something then. I hadn't seen the other delivery guy all night after he'd been hanging around the shop earlier. What if he'd come here first? What if he had felt something was wrong and decided to leave without saying anything? That would explain why the pizza was still there. And if that was true, then whatever was planned for me hadn't worked the first time. So they ordered again from a different shop. The idea made my skin crawl. They clearly didn't care about the food. Anyone who actually wanted pizza wouldn't leave it soaking on the porch in the rain. The delivery itself wasn't the goal. I was as I drove back toward the shop, my thoughts spiraled. The more I replayed that woman's voice in my head, the more disturbing it sounded. The way she stayed hidden. The way she tried to move me away from the front of the house, away from the street, away from anyone who might see. The side of the house was darker, more isolated, and beyond that, the trees. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had been there. Someone I never saw. Someone who wasn't meant to be seen until it was too late. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my hands were still shaking. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just walked inside, clocked out, and went home. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind dragged me right back to that house. The darkness, the silence, that voice behind the door. I kept replaying it over and over, trying to find some logical explanation, something normal that I'd missed in the moment, but nothing fit. If the front door was really broken, why didn't anyone mention it when they placed the order? Why not leave instructions in the app? And why choose the side door that looked like it hadn't been used in years? And then there was the other pizza. That detail bothered me more than anything else. It wasn't just forgotten, it felt discarded. Like whoever lived there didn't care about it at all. Almost like the pizza itself had never been the point. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that I hadn't been the first delivery driver to feel something was off that night. The other guy from my shop had been hanging around for an unusually long time before I left. Maybe he'd already been out there. Maybe he'd seen something I hadn't. Or maybe he'd heard that same voice out by morning. I told myself I was overreacting. Storms mess with your head. Late nights do too. Fear has a way of filling in the blanks when you don't have answers. Still, when my next shift came around, I found myself checking addresses more carefully than ever. Every unfamiliar street made my shoulders tense. Every dark porch felt just a little too quiet. Days passed. Then weeks thought nothing else happened. No strange calls, no eerie houses, no gravelly voices behind locked doors. Slowly, I started to believe that night really had been a one-time thing, some weird coincidence that just happened to hit all the wrong nerves at once. But even now, I can't fully let it go, because no matter how many times I replay it, one question always comes back. What was supposed to happen after I walked to that side porch? If I'd waited just a little longer, if I hadn't listened to my instincts, I don't think I would have walked away from that house the same way. And that's the part that still scares me the most. Over time, I tried to build a story around what happened, something that made sense, something my brain could accept so I could finally move on. I needed an explanation, even if it wasn't a comforting one. The theory I keep coming back to is this: the woman wasn't alone. That house sat too far back from the road. The trees were too thick. The darkness was too complete. If someone had been standing just beyond the edge of the yard, hidden among the trees, I never would have seen them. Not from the driveway, not from the porch, not even from the side of the house. And that's exactly why she wanted me there. The front door faced the street. Anyone driving by even at that late hour might have seen something strange. A struggle, a scream, a kid running. But this side of the house, that was completely shielded. No witnesses, no visibility, just shadows and rain and trees. I think the voice was meant to sound authoritative, calm, normal enough that I'd obey without questioning it. And for a moment, I did. I walked exactly where she told me to walk. That realization still makes my stomach turn, because if I hadn't felt that sudden sense of being watched, if my instincts hadn't gone into full panic mode, I might have stood there longer. I might have waited for that door to open and whatever came next. I doubt it would have ended with me running back to my car. What scares me even more is how simple the plan was. No force, no threats, just patience, just isolation, just waiting for someone young, alone, and distracted by doing their job. Someone like me. I still work at the same pizza place. I still deliver late sometimes. But I don't take unfamiliar addresses lightly anymore. And I don't ignore that gut feeling, ever. Because that might taught me something important. Some people don't order pizza because they're hungry. They order it because they're waiting. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and something terrible is the instinct to walk away. It's been a long time since that delivery, but the memory hasn't faded the way I hoped it would. Some nights, it still feels fresh, like it just happened yesterday. I can still picture the rain streaking down my windshield, the darkness swallowing that driveway, the way the house looked completely lifeless until it suddenly wasn't. I kept the job. I even stayed on late shifts for a while. On the surface, everything went back to normal. Same uniform, same car, same routine. But I wasn't the same anymore. Every delivery after that night felt different. I started noticing things I never paid attention to before. How quiet a street was. How far. A house sat back from the road, where the lights turned on before I even parked. If a place felt wrong, even slightly, my body reacted before my mind could talk me out of it. Nothing even close to that night has happened since. No strange voices. No abandoned pizzas, no houses trying to pull me out of sight. And yet, I don't feel relieved, because what scares me most isn't what did happen, it's what almost did. That situation was so ordinary on the surface. Just another order, just another address, just another late-night delivery in the rain. If I'd been a little more tired, a little more focused on the job, a little less willing to listen to my instincts, things could have gone very differently, I think about that other pizza sometimes. The one left on the porch like it didn't matter at all. I wonder if that delivery driver felt the same fear I did, or if he saw something. I never got the chance to see Don. Maybe he left before it went any further. Maybe I was the backup plan. That's the thought that sticks with me. The idea that someone somewhere was patient enough to wait, to try again, to assume that eventually someone would stay just a little too long. I don't know who lived in that house. I don't know if anyone was ever caught. I don't even know if my theory is right. All I know is this: that night taught me that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers through a closed door. Sometimes it hides in the dark, just out of sight. And sometimes it sounds like a normal request that pulls you exactly where you shouldn't go. I still deliver pizza, but every time I drive away from a house, I'm grateful for one thing above all else. I listened to my instincts and I got out. Almost 2 years ago, something happened to me that still hasn't left my mind. No matter how much time passes, that night keeps replaying in fragments, like my brain never filed it away properly. Back then, I was working as a park ranger in a massive wilderness reserve. I won't name the place for obvious reasons, but it wasn't one of those popular, tourist-heavy forests people line up to visit. In fact, it was the opposite. Despite being huge, dense, and stretching for miles in every direction, very few people came through. Other parks in the state were far more attractive, which meant this one stayed quiet, almost too quiet. Because of that, staffing was minimal. We didn't have the luxury of large ranger teams or constant patrols. Most days, it was just a handful of us covering an area far bigger than we reasonably should have been responsible for. My duties changed constantly. Some days I'd hike long distances just to inspect campsites, clean up trash, or make sure fire pits were safe. Other times, I'd assist with search and rescue calls when hikers got injured or lost. The park allowed overnight camping and long backpacking routes, so someone always had to be on duty during the night. I usually worked awkward in between shifts. Not quite daytime, not fully overnight either. I'd often clock out around midnight, sometimes closer to 3 or 4 in the morning. That schedule already messes with your head, especially when you're spending hours alone in the wilderness. On the day, everything happened. I'd been assigned to a remote campground deep inside the park. It took a while just to reach it. I rode in a TV part of the way down a narrow trail, but eventually the terrain became too steep and broken to continue. From there, I had to hike the rest on foot. By the time I reached the campground, it felt completely cut off from the world. No voices, no movement, no smoke from campfires. I checked every site carefully. There were no tents, no gear, no signs that anyone had been there recently. I was completely alone. As the sun dipped below the tree line, I packed up and started heading back. I hiked in total darkness to where I'd left the ATV, then rode it carefully down the trail toward the Ranger Lodge where I was stationed for the night. The lodge itself was nothing impressive, just a small wooden cabin with a desk, a wood stove, and a heavy-duty radio used to contact other rangers or emergency services. About an hour after I got back, the rain started. At first, it was light. Then it picked up fast. Storms weren't unusual in that area, so I didn't think much of it. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat down at the desk, and began writing up notes about the campground I'd just inspected. Everything was normal, quiet, almost peaceful. A couple of hours passed like that. Then, without warning, the radio crackled to life. The radio clicked, sharp and sudden, breaking the calm of the storm. A voice came through one of the other rangers. "Are you there?" he asked, his tone cautious, almost hesitant. I grabbed the handset. "Yeah, I'm here. What's up?" He hesitated for a beat, then asked if I had seen anyone at the campground. I'd just visited. I told him honestly that the place had been completely empty. No tents, no campers, nothing. Just me and the trees. Another long pause followed. About 30 seconds of static and heavy breathing. When he spoke again, his voice sounded uneasy, reluctant. He said there might be a problem. The station had received a satellite SOS ping, the kind hikers carry for emergencies, and the signal was coming from the trail I'd just walked. Naturally, I was the closest ranger. Everyone else was at least an hour away. If someone truly needed help, it would be on me to respond first. The other ranger explained that no follow-up messages had come through the device. No texts, no signals confirming the SOS was accidental. Sometimes these things happen. Buttons get pressed by mistake, especially when someone carries it in a backpack. But you never ignore it. Not when it comes to someone's life. There was just one problem: the storm. Rain was hammering the trees, the wind rattling the roof of the cabin. My TV was useless in conditions like this. It would have gotten stuck almost immediately on the slick, mud-slick trail. So I grabbed my essentials: my raincoat, headlamp, flashlight, and radio. Every step out the door was accompanied by the pounding rain and the distant rumble of thunder. I double-checked the coordinates with the other ranger, roughly 2 miles up the trail, but with a single ping, we had no way of knowing which direction. The person had moved in. The walk took about 45 minutes, which was surprisingly fast given the storm. But with the wind and rain hammering down and branches whipping across the trail, I couldn't help but worry. If a hiker was really out there, inexperienced and unprepared, they were in serious danger. Even with my experience and high-powered lights, navigating the forest in that weather was exhausting and dangerous. Shining my flashlight through the darkness, I scanned every shadow between the trees. Then, out of nowhere, my beam caught something that made my heart nearly stop. A man was standing just off the trail, maybe 10 feet away. He was soaked head to toe, his long hair plastered against his face. There was no jacket, no backpack, nothing to suggest he was prepared for the night or the storm. He didn't move at first, just stood there, staring at me. I yelled through the rain, "I'm a ranger. Are you okay?" Nothing. Silence. Only the storm and the pounding rain around us. It was then I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. He had no visible gear at all, not even the satellite device that had triggered the SOS. My instinct screamed that something wasn't right. I waved him toward the trail, telling him my lodge was just a few miles back. "Come on, you'll be safe there," I shouted. Instead of coming toward me, he bolted straight into the forest. Gone in seconds, I froze, caught between disbelief and adrenaline. My mind raced. Should I follow him into the woods in this storm, or stay on the trail where I was safer? I reached for my radio and contacted the other ranger, explaining the situation. He listened, his voice calm but alert. For a few moments, I felt trapped in the silence, unsure of the right move. Then, abruptly, the radio crackled again. Another SOS ping. Same device, same general area, but slightly east of the first signal. It was him. He was the source of the alert. But why? And why run deeper into the forest in a storm? I knew at that moment this wasn't a simple rescue. Something about this felt off. I took a deep breath, gripping my flashlight tighter. The rain was relentless, each drop feeling like tiny needles on my face. My heart was still racing from the first sight of him, soaked, wild-eyed, and utterly unpredictable. Now, with the second SOS ping coming from just a quarter mile east of the first, I knew I was walking into something dangerous. The thought gnawed at me. Was he really lost, scared, and confused, or was this some twisted game? Either way, I had no choice. Someone could genuinely be in trouble, and if I ignored it, the guilt would eat me alive. I stepped cautiously off the trail and into the undergrowth, flashlight sweeping side to side. Every movement of the trees, every rustle in the leaves made me flinch. My mind kept replaying the image of his face. Something in his eyes had felt wrong, lifeless, but not just tired or delirious. Something darker, something deliberate. 5 minutes into the forest, the rain had soaked me to the bone. The mud sucked at my boots, and branches clawed at my jacket as I pushed forward. My flashlight flicked across something small on the ground. I froze. It was glowing faintly, almost imperceptible at first, but then I recognized it immediately. An orange device reflecting my light back at me, a Garmin satellite messenger. I swallowed hard, adrenaline spiking. This was the SOS device, but where was the man? My first thought was relief. Maybe I'd find him, help him, and end this nightmare quickly. But the forest seemed to hold its breath, and then I heard it. Footsteps, fast, heavy, coming from my right. I swung my flashlight, and there he was. The same man, barreling toward me like a predator. Not limping, not staggering, not desperate, aggressive. Full speed, eyes locked, intent clear. I jumped aside instinctively, but he stumbled and fell, trying desperately to grab me even as he hit the mud. My instincts screamed, "This is not a lost hiker. This is danger." I froze for just a moment, long enough to see his eyes. Lifeless, vacant, almost empty, yet terrifyingly focused. Something about them told me that if I didn't run, he would overpower me. Without thinking twice, I sprinted. Slipping, sliding, mud flying everywhere, I ran faster than I ever had. The rain pelted my face. Branches whipped my arms and legs, but nothing slowed me down. I didn't look back. Every second felt like eternity. Every shadow a potential threat. Through the walkie, I shouted to the other ranger. This is no accident. I think it was a setup. I need backup now." I didn't stop until the lodge came into view, a small beacon of safety in the dark, stormy wilderness. Slamming the door behind me, I locked it tight and leaned against it, chest heaving. My hand shook uncontrollably, still gripping my flashlight. It took 10 more minutes for the other ranger to reach the lodge. 40 minutes later, a proper officer arrived. By that time, I was still drenched, exhausted, and questioning everything I'd just seen. The storm hadn't stopped, but at least I was finally out of the immediate danger. My mind kept spinning, trying to make sense of it. Who was that man? Why did he have the SOS device? Why run deeper into the forest instead of heading towards safety? The storm raged through the night, but I didn't care about anything except staying locked inside the lodge. My chest was still pounding, my mind spinning with every possible scenario. The man I'd seen out there, he wasn't just lost. That much was obvious now. His behavior, the way he used the SOS signal, it wasn't accidental. Someone had baited me out there. And the thought of what could have happened if I'd gone deeper into the forest alone made my stomach churn. The other ranger finally arrived at the lodge, soaked but calm. I recounted everything. The initial SOS ping, finding the man, his sudden sprint into the woods, and the second ping that confirmed he was still out there. I could tell he believed me. He'd worked enough nights in the forest to know that sometimes things aren't what they seem, but there was only so much he could do in the storm. The visibility was terrible, the terrain treacherous. Any search now was almost impossible. They decided to postpone the actual search until morning. It was the only logical choice. My heart sank. Morning would mean daylight, yes, but it would also mean going back to the same trail. The same dark, wet forest that had almost claimed me that night. And even then, what if the man was gone? What if he disappeared without a trace, like a ghost? Morning came, heavy with rain, but at least the visibility had improved. Officers combed the trail, tracing the path I had taken the night before. The Garmin satellite messenger was found exactly where I'd seen it. Nothing else. No signs of the man. No tracks indicating where he had gone. It was as if he had evaporated into the forest. The strangest part? That device alone didn't make sense. Those messengers aren't cheap. Hikers carry them along with gear backpacks, food, proper clothing for emergencies. But this man had nothing. No gear, no supplies, not even wet weather clothing. Just him and that device. Where had he gotten it? Did he have it all along? Or did he take it from someone else? I couldn't stop wondering, Don, after that incident. Life at the park went back to normal, or as normal as it ever got. I stayed on, patrolling the trails, checking campsites, doing my usual rounds. But mentally, something had shifted. Every creak of a tree, every shadow in the corner of my vision made me tense up. That night stayed with me. I'd been close to a very real danger, and I knew it. No other SOS calls came in. No one else reported seeing him. The forest remained quiet, almost eerily calm. But for me, the memory lingered like a weight pressing on my chest. Every time I walked that trail alone, every time I heard a twig snap in the wind, I pictured those dark, empty eyes charging at me through the rain. Even a year later, when I finally left the park, I still couldn't shake it. I'd been too close to something horrible. And part of me still wonders if he was out there, somewhere, waiting for the next person to answer his call. Even after I left the forest behind, that night haunted me. It wasn't just the storm, the darkness, or the adrenaline. It was the feeling of being played. That man wasn't lost. He knew exactly what he was doing. The SOS signal, the timing, the way he ran straight into the forest instead of toward help. It was deliberate. He had set a trap, and I had walked right into it. For months afterward, I replayed the events over and over in my head. I imagined myself going deeper into the woods, alone, facing him without backup. Every scenario ended the same way. Me cornered, helpless, with that eerie stare locked on me. I couldn't shake it. I even dreamt about it, running through rain-soaked trees, hearing his footsteps behind me, feeling the cold mud sucking at my boots. It changed the way I saw my job. Being a ranger had always meant helping people, saving them when they were in danger. But that night reminded me that the wilderness isn't always innocent. Sometimes people come into it with malicious intent, using the forest as a weapon, using the elements as a cover. It made every solo patrol after that feel heavier. Every snap of a branch, every rustle in the brush, it could be anything. Or anyone. What disturbed me most was the man himself. It didn't look like he belonged in the woods, yet he knew it well enough to use it against me. He didn't need supplies, didn't need shelter, didn't even need a reason for the SOS other than to lure me out. The sheer audacity of it. It left a mark that no training or experience could erase. I spoke to other rangers about it, carefully, leaving out details that might make them think I overreacted. But they could see it in my eyes, the fear that lingered long after the storm passed. None of them had ever encountered anyone like that. And after weeks, months, the incident was quietly filed away. Just another mysterious SON, the logs. But I never forgot. I realized something that day. The forest can be peaceful, majestic, even healing, but it can also be predatory, and not just the animals or the elements. People too can use it as a hunting ground. That thought stayed with me, lingering at the back of my mind every time I returned to civilization, every time I walked past a dark alley or a quiet, empty trail. Even now, a year after leaving the park, the memory is vivid. The rain, the mud, the darkness, his wild, empty eyes, it's all burned into me. I still picture him sprinting through the trees, the orange glow of the SOS device reflecting in my flashlight beam, and the thought that I almost didn't make it back to safety. It's something I can't erase. Even after that night faded into memory, questions kept haunting me. Who was he? Where did he come from? And most importantly, why? The more I thought about it, the stranger it became. That satellite messenger he had, those things are expensive. Most hikers don't carry one without reason. And yet, he had no gear, no backpack, no supplies. Just a device. How had he gotten it? Did he steal it? Was it even his to begin with? I replayed every detail. The way he had stood in the storm, soaking wet, almost like he was waiting for me. The way he bolted into the forest instead of coming toward help. The eerie calm in his movements, despite the raging storm. Everything about him was off, deliberate, calculated. What really unsettled me was the thought that he might still be out there. The forest is vast, and while most people respect its dangers, some don't. Some use it as a place to hide, to manipulate, to trap. That night, I had been alone, vulnerable, and completely exposed. And he knew it. I went back to that trail several times afterward, during daylight, hoping to find some clue footprints, gear, anything that could explain what happened. But the forest had swallowed it all. Nothing, not a trace. The device was gone, and he had vanished like a shadow. I realized something about fear that night. Something I'd never understood fully before. Fear isn't just about physical danger. Fear can live in your mind long after the danger is gone. It's the knowledge that someone else had the power to control your actions, to put you in harm's way, and you didn't even know it until it was almost too late. That fear never left me. Even now, when I think about that forest, about the storm and that man, I feel that tightening in my chest again. That instinctive warning that something unseen, something predatory, might be lurking just beyond the trees. The adrenaline, the rain, the cold, it all comes rushing back. And the strangest, most unnerving part? The logs and reports never mentioned him again. No one else reported a sighting. No additional SOS calls. It's like the entire incident disappeared, filed away quietly and forgotten by everyone except me. But I remember every second. Looking back now, almost a year after I finally left the park, I can honestly say I'm still not over it. That night changed me permanently, not just as a ranger, but as a person. I learned firsthand that danger isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, masked by the ordinary, the storm, the trees, the rain, and yet entirely intentional. I think about that man constantly. His empty eyes, the way he used the SOS to lure me, his sudden bursts of speed through the forest. It plays in my head like a loop I can't turn off. I keep imagining where he might be now. Was he just passing through that forest? Or does he return sometimes, watching, waiting, ready to strike again if someone else answers the wrong call? The thought is enough to make me hesitate anytime I find myself alone in a wilderness, even in a small park near town. What really unsettles me is that nothing official ever came of it. The incident was quietly closed, no further investigation reported, and no other ranger claimed to have seen him. But I know what I saw. I know what I almost faced. And I know how close I came to being in real danger. Even years later, I find myself replaying the scenario in my mind, thinking about how small choices could have ended differently. What if I had followed him deeper into the woods? What if I had ignored the first SOS ping? The possibilities are terrifying. The thought that someone could deliberately manipulate you, lure you into a dangerous situation, is something I can't shake. That night left me with more than just fear. It left a lesson etched into my mind. The wilderness isn't always a place of solitude or peace. Sometimes it's a place where danger hides in human form, waiting for the perfect moment to test you. And sometimes the danger is closer than you realize. I never saw him again. No SOS pings, no footprints, no sightings. But I carry that memory with me every time I step into the forest, or even just think about stepping into one. That night wasn't just a storm, or a lost hiker, or a signal gone off by accident. That night was a warning. A reminder that not all threats are visible, and not all who call for help are truly in need. And honestly, part of me hopes I never find out what really became of him, because if I did, I'm not sure I'd be ready to face it. This happened during a road trip I took that started in a quiet little town in Maine and stretched all the way toward the Midwest. There were some serious family issues going on at the time, things I won't get into, but they were heavy enough that I felt I needed to be there in person for a while. The trip itself wasn't planned properly at all. Normally, I would have booked a flight without thinking twice, but for some reason, I chose to drive. Maybe I needed the time alone. Maybe I just wasn't thinking clearly. Either way, by the second day, I realized I was already running late. All the fuel stops, food breaks, bathroom visits, and short rests added up way more than I expected. To make up for lost time, I convinced myself it was a good idea to keep driving late into the night. By then, I was deep into that part of the Midwest where the landscape feels endless flat land, straight roads, and absolutely nothing around for miles. No towns, no lights, just darkness stretching forever. At first, the rain came down gently, almost relaxing, but as the sky grew darker, the weather shifted fast. The rain turned aggressive, the wind picked up, and thunder started rolling in hard. I usually don't mind driving in the rain. In fact, I kind of enjoy it. But at night, alone, surrounded by nothing but empty land, that was a different story. The storm got intense enough that I decided to pull off at the next rest stop and wait it out for a bit. I don't have much experience with rest stops, but this one seemed decent enough. The place was completely silent, except for the rain hammering down. No other cars, no trucks. When I ran inside to use the restroom, everything was surprisingly clean, almost too clean for somewhere so isolated. Afterward, I went back to my car, reclined the seat, and figured I'd just rest my eyes for a moment. I didn't even check the time. At some point, without realizing it, I fell asleep. What woke me up wasn't gentle. A blinding flash of light filled the car, followed by a thunderclap so loud it felt like it exploded right next to me. The entire car shook violently. My heart jumped into my throat as I jolted upright. I checked the clock, 12:05 a.m. I looked around. The storm was still raging, maybe even worse than before. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. One of the back doors on the passenger side was slightly open. Rainwater was dripping onto the seat, soaking the interior. That door hadn't just popped open seconds ago. It had been open for a while, and I knew, without a doubt, that I hadn't opened it. My entire body went cold. I froze for a moment, staring at that slightly ajar door, my mind racing. There was no way I had driven for hours with it open. I would have noticed. I definitely hadn't opened it while at the rest stop. And cars don't just open themselves. I forced myself to look around the empty parking lot. Nothing. Not a single car. Not a person. Not even a shadow. My heart started pounding like crazy. I slowly got out and slammed the door shut, trying to convince myself I had just forgotten to lock it when I stepped inside earlier. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Who could have done this? And why? It didn't make sense. Nothing seemed missing: my wallet, my bag. Everything was untouched. It was as if someone had quietly opened the door, stepped in for a moment while I slept, and then left without a trace, careful not to wake me. The thought alone made my skin crawl. I climbed back into the driver's seat, hands shaking, and started the car. The storm was still relentless, but I needed to put some distance between myself and that creepy rest stop. My mind was racing with possibilities, none of them comforting. I drove for 20 minutes, eyes darting constantly to the rearview mirror, my nerves stretched thin. Finally, I spotted a small gas station just off the highway. It was completely deserted, or maybe it was closed for the night. I didn't care. I wasn't planning to get out or linger. I just needed a safe place to pause until the storm passed. Parking right in front of the building, I realized how unsettling the place felt. The lights were off, the rain poured down in sheets, and shadows seemed to cling to the edges of the lot. I had no phone service, so I couldn't even call anyone. All I could do was lock the doors and sit there, staring into the fog and rain, trying to calm my racing mind. About 20 minutes passed. I was zoning out, mind wandering in the endless gray blur of rain and darkness, when I noticed another car. It hadn't been there before. Black, unmarked, windows darkly tinted, headlights off, parked just a few spaces away. I didn't see it pull in. My stomach twisted. The idea that someone could be following me had crossed my mind before, but seeing this car now, here in the middle of nowhere during a storm, made my blood run cold. Two strange incidents in one night, too much to be coincidence. Almost too precise. My eyes stayed locked on that black car, trying to read some sign, some clue, some way to make sense of it. And then I heard a quiet click, followed by the unmistakable sound of a back door handle being pulled. I spun around and saw a figure by the car window. As soon as he realized I was watching, he stepped back, disappearing behind my car. My mind screamed, adrenaline shot through my veins, and panic set in. He was here. He had been following me. I had no doubt now. I fumbled with the locks, trying to make sense of my shaking hands and racing heart, desperate to think clearly. And then I felt it thumps against the back of my car. Someone was trying to get in. The fear hit a new level. I slammed the car into drive, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, and floored it. When I looked in the rearview mirror, there was nothing. He was gone, but the marks he left behind weren't. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back again. I just kept driving, pushing myself to stay focused while my heart felt like it was trying to tear its way out of my chest. The storm followed me for miles, rain slamming against the windshield, thunder echoing in the distance. But none of that scared me as much as what had just happened. I drove for nearly 2 hours straight before I finally reached a small town one with actual streetlights, buildings, and signs of life. The moment I pulled in, I felt a slight sense of relief, like I could finally breathe again. I went straight to a well-lit area and stopped the car, my hands still trembling. That's when I got out and walked around to the back. The sight made my stomach drop. The trunk was scratched up badly. Deep marks ran across the metal, not random scuffs either. These were deliberate. There were dents, jagged lines, and clear pry marks around the edges, like someone had tried to force it open using something sharp, a knife, maybe, or a tool. Whatever it was, they'd put effort into it. Standing there under those lights, the reality of it all hit me hard. Someone hadn't just been messing around. Whoever that guy was, he was determined to get into my car. And that's when a terrifying question formed in my mind. What exactly was he trying to get? If his goal was to steal something, why didn't he do it earlier? He had the perfect chance back at the rest stop. I was asleep. The door was already open. If robbery was the plan, that would have been the easiest moment to go through my car, take whatever he wanted, and disappear without a trace. But that's not what happened. Instead, it felt like he was testing something, watching, waiting, following me. And when I left, he followed again right to that gas station. This time, he didn't just open a door. He tried to force his way into the trunk, like he was running out of patience. The more I thought about it, the worse it got. The idea that someone could have been standing just feet away from me while I slept, that they might have been inside my car for a moment. That thought made my skin crawl. I don't know what his intentions were. I don't know if he wanted what was in the car or if he wanted me. All I know is that if I hadn't woken up when I did, if I hadn't locked the doors the second time, this story could have ended very differently. Even now, thinking back on it, I still don't have answers. Just fear. And the unsettling knowledge that sometimes the scariest things aren't monsters or ghosts, but real people, hiding in the dark, waiting for the right moment. After seeing the damage on my trunk, I just stood there for a few seconds, completely frozen. The rain had finally eased up, but my body was still tense, like I was stuck in survival mode. Every sound around me felt amplified, cars passing in the distance, wind brushing against buildings. Even my own breathing sounded too loud. I went inside a nearby place that was still open and told them what happened. I don't remember exactly how I explained it, only that my words came out rushed and shaky. They contacted the authorities, and I waited there, sitting under bright lights, replaying everything over and over in my head. While waiting, the details started hitting me harder. That rest stop, the open door, the soaked seats. Someone had been close to me, close enough to open my car quietly, close enough to stand there in the storm and watch me sleep. The thought alone made my stomach twist. I kept wondering how long he stood there. Seconds? Minutes? Was he right outside my window the whole time? And then the gas station. The black car didn't just appear randomly. It parked nearby, lights off, almost hiding in plain sight. The timing was too perfect. He waited until I was distracted, until my guard was down. And then he tried the same door again, like he already knew where to go. That realization shook me more than anything else. He knew my car. He knew where I was sitting. He knew which door to try first. That meant the first incident wasn't random at all. When the police finally checked the car, they confirmed what I already suspected. Those marks weren't accidental. Someone had tried to pry the trunk open, hard. Whoever it was didn't give up easily either. They stopped because I drove off, not because they failed. Once everything was done, I didn't stay in that town longer than necessary. I checked into a hotel, parked in a crowded, well-lit area, and barely slept that night. Every noise made me jolt awake. Every shadow outside the window felt wrong. The next morning, I continued my trip, but I changed everything. I only drove during daylight. I stopped only in busy areas. And I never slept in my car again. Even now, years later, that night still sticks with me. Not because I know what happened, but because I don't. The unanswered questions are what haunt me the most. Because somewhere out there, there's a person who followed me through a storm. And I'll never know what he planned to do if I hadn't woken up. For a long time after that night, I tried to explain it away. I told myself maybe it was just bad luck layered on top of exhaustion. Maybe the storm, the lack of sleep, and my already stressed mindset made everything feel worse than it really was. But no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, the facts never changed. The door was open, the trunk was damaged, and someone was there. What disturbed me the most wasn't just the physical evidence, it was the behavior. Whoever that person was didn't act like a typical thief. A normal robber wouldn't quietly open a door, find someone asleep inside, and then leave without taking anything. And they definitely wouldn't follow that same person miles down the road, wait in the dark, and then try again. That felt intentional. calculated. What scares me most is that nothing about that man felt rushed or desperate. He didn't smash windows or cause a scene. He didn't flee immediately when I noticed him. He simply moved out of sight and kept trying. That kind of calm persistence isn't normal. It suggests intention, planning, confidence. And that's when I realized something unsettling. He wasn't afraid of being caught. That means he either believed no one was around or that even if something happened, it wouldn't matter. Out there, in the middle of nowhere, he was probably right. And that realization made me feel smaller than I've ever felt before. Ever since then, long drives don't feel the same. Empty highways don't feel peaceful. Rest stops don't feel safe. I understand now how quickly isolation can turn into danger, and how thin the line really is between a normal night and something far darker. I walked away from that experience physically unharmed, but mentally, it left a mark. A permanent reminder that sometimes survival has nothing to do with strength or preparation, and everything to do with timing. Looking back now, what unsettles me the most is how ordinary the night started. There was nothing dramatic about it at first, just a long drive, bad weather, and exhaustion. That's what makes it so disturbing. Moments like that don't come with warnings. They slip in quietly, disguised as routine. I finished that trip, handled the family situation I went there for, and eventually made it back home. Life moved on, at least on the surface. But that night never really stayed behind. It followed me back, settling somewhere in the back of my mind. Every time I stop at a rest area now, I hesitate. Every time I'm alone on an empty road, I feel that same tension creep in. I check my mirrors more often than I used to. I lock my doors without thinking. I trust my instincts, even when I can't explain them. Because that experience taught me a harsh lesson: comfort and safety are fragile illusions. The scariest part isn't knowing what that man wanted. It's knowing I'll never know. Was he trying to steal something? Was he testing to see if I was alone? Or was he waiting for the right moment to do something far worse? There are no answers, no clear ending. Just a series of events that stopped one step short of disaster. And that's what still haunts me. Somewhere out there, that person walked away that night. He didn't get caught. He didn't face consequences. He simply disappeared back into the darkness, free to do whatever he intended next, maybe to someone else. All I know is this: if I hadn't woken up when I did, if I hadn't trusted that surge of fear and driven away, this wouldn't just be a story I'm telling now. It would have been the last one I ever lived. So if there's one thing I took from that night, it's this: when something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why, don't ignore it. Because sometimes that feeling is the only thing standing between you and something you'll never come back from.